Hello everybody, welcome back. In this video, we shall look at some ideas that you can use in your memory game to make it more interesting, to learn more from it, and also in the process earn bonus points. However, before we go there, let's recall some of the basic rules about bonus, right? So that the first rule is that bonus comes after basic. You always earn bonus. What you can do for bonus is almost endless. What earns you bonus today may or may not earn you bonus in future. Bonus is your opportunity to push yourself, try out new things, and amaze everybody. However, please do remember rule number one that bonus comes after basic, right? Now, I keep repeating this all the time because this is so important if you want to be systematic about this whole process, right? Now, this particular project is all about using lists. So, we create lists in the beginning and then we later on use those lists to ask questions, right? So, before you attempt any bonus, try to be as comfortable as you can with the basic usage of lists, right? So how we use this in this game. And also remember to add your instructions slash description on the project page to tell us clearly what bonus ideas you have tried so that we do not miss anything, right? Now with that prelude, let's look at some ideas that you could use in your game. Now the first set of ideas is all about what I call the visual slash creative elements. These are really more like things that you might do to make your game visually more appealing, right? So this may not necessarily require lists, and hence I'm clubbing them into one category, right? So, for example, one thing you could do is that whenever your hero sprite responds, when in the quiz part, when the hero sprite is asking questions and you answer something correctly, perhaps the hero sprite does a celebration, right? Recall back to your quiz game long time back. When you have, so maybe the hero sprite does a small celebration, changes costume or something like that, right? Likewise for incorrect answer. Similarly, the background sprite, right? Remember, this game has a background sprite and a hero sprite. So the background sprite probably, again changes costumes or goes through some kind of a graphic effect. Maybe it disappears, or maybe a part of it disappears whenever the hero sprite visits it, right? And there's a project I'm putting in the description. You can take a look at that, right? Now, this is all the visual creative elements. I'll lump it all into one category because everything from here on will be all focused on lists, right? So, the next idea is about how do we place the building or in general the background sprite on the screen, right? Now, remember in the class game, we have placed them in a single row along the x-axis, right? But you could do more than that. You could put them in two dimensions. Now, what I mean by that is put them, for example, in a grid, right? Or in a, say, in a diagonal, right? Whatever uses both x and y axis, right? Now, when you do that, you will have to make more lists. You not only for the x position, you will also have to make a list for the y positions, and hence the complexity goes up, right? There's a game I'm putting, there's a project I'm putting in the description. Please take a look at that. You will get a pretty clear idea of what I'm talking about, right? Now, similarly, you can think of placing these costumes in a random order, right? Now, this needs a little bit of clarification. If you look at the class game, right, also we put them in random order, but the only randomness really is which costume ends up on the leftmost position, right? So is it costume 1, 2, 3 until 7, right? But once it sets up, on the leftmost order, thereafter it's always next costume in the building placement, right? So which means it's not really random, right? But what if I add another dimension of randomness to this, that the entire sequence is completely random, right? Now this will require you to use lists because you have to avoid situation where you get same building being placed twice, right? So this requires a little bit more work. Again, I'm putting a project in the description for you to take a look and get some ideas from. Moving forward, now you can actually combine ideas from fortune teller with this game, right? Now, what do I mean by that, right? Remember, our hero sprite asks us questions and then it tells us answers. It tells us whether we have answered correctly or not answered correctly, right? So, if you have answered correctly, it says something like, okay, very good. If not, it says, okay, you need to be maybe more attentive or something, right? But then hero sprite could do more. In fact, hero sprite can maintain two lists. It can have lists, let's say, correct answers and wrong answers, right? And it can pick up these answers from those lists. So the game becomes quite interesting. You can be a little bit sarcastic. You can be a little bit more playful in responding. For example, if the user doesn't reply correctly, right? Then moving forward, you can have different type of questions, right? So in the class, we use very simple list operations, but you can go more, right? For example, we ask, okay, what is the first building that we visited, right? So you can ask probably what is the building I visited after I visited, say, a certain building or a certain background sprite. I mean, building is just an example from the class, but really you can use any background sprite, right, for this. Uh, One thing I must highlight here is that the game has a basic marking criterion that you must use three different type of list functions, right? So if you just use item 1, item 2, item 3, that will not be seen as different type of questions. What I mean is really more innovative questions. I just gave you one example, but there may be more, right, that you could use to earn this bonus, let's say, right? uh, Combining all this, you can really create multiple levels, right? So for example, maybe the first level is very easy, that there are, say, two or three background sprites, and you know uh, so sprite goes to one of those. Then maybe it goes a little bit faster in the next level, it goes to more stations. Maybe the sprites are placed in a two-dimensional grid, and then probably it's very hard, it just shuttles through very, very fast through those, and the questions are also a little bit harder, right? So I think a lot of things can be done. Of course, it requires work for all these three, which means to combining fortune teller with memory game, different types of questions, different levels. I'm giving you examples in the description. You could take a look at those, and I think those will help you, right? Finally, right, and this is actually quite hard, I must say that, right? You can intertwine the travel and the questions, right? So what do I mean by that, right? So you can, for example, think of it this way, right? In the present game right now, the hero sprite goes to multiple locations and then asks you questions. Okay, where did I go? Where did I not go? And so on and so forth, right? But you could do something different. For example, you can say that, okay, look, the hero will go to one building in the beginning, or one location in the beginning, and then maybe ask a question about that, right? Next, it will go to two locations in the building, and two locations, and then it will ask you questions about those two, right? Maybe which one did I visit first or second, whatever, right? Then it goes to three and asks for three. Then it goes to four, asks for four, right? And so on and so forth, right? So you can do that, but what that needs to do is, that requires you to do, is to take care of your lists very carefully, use broadcasts in a very controlled manner to have a grip on what's going on, right? And one of the things that I can kind of sort of compare this against, just this very popular game called Simon Says, where there's a music box which makes these tunes, and a similar kind of logic is used, right? So one note, then two notes, three notes, and so on and so forth, right? I'm putting a game in the description. You can take a look at that, but this one is not very easy, right? So I must warn you to try this. Get quite comfortable with all the other thing in there, right? But this is, I think, a really cool variation of the game, so I thought I'll bring this up, right? Now, let's, as I always do, let's look at all these ideas once again in context of the game that we did in the class, right? So remember, our class game had this Noor and this background sprite called buildings. It's kind of like when I click the flag, buildings are formed, Noor goes to this 5, 6, 4 locations and then asks us questions, right? Now, the first thing that I said is visual slash creative elements. Now, what you can really do is do more than just Noora standing in one place and asking questions, right? Probably whenever I answer something correctly, which means, for example, here, instead of Noor telling me, okay, you answered correctly or something like that, this is a very simple response. Maybe Noor does a small dance, right, or something like that, right? Or maybe change its costume, and likewise, right? So you can have, maybe you can broadcast to say correct answer, and then do some celebration. You probably have to use broadcast and wait over there. You will have to decide that, and then and the game continues, right? Something more interesting from that point of view. Likewise, on the building, right? Now, whenever Noor is visiting a building, uh, probably something can happen to the costume, right? Maybe it becomes black color or something, it disappears. So you can, again, whenever, so you'll have to do that code. One of the things that the project that description does is that this background sprite is actually in two parts. So one part, in fact, disappears whenever the hero visits it, right? So yeah, again, this is just, let's say, the visual creative elements, right? Now, I said the next thing I said is placing the background sprite in X and Y grid, right? Now, what do I mean by that, right? Notice here, when I click flag, the buildings are all placed in one row, right? You can do better, right? You can, in fact, place them like a grid, right? Depending on your sprite. And the thing that is important there is that along with X positions, you will also have to monitor the Y positions, right? And wherever you use them, for example, you want to send this hero sprite to all the different locations, then you have to take care of not just the X, but also the Y, right? But it makes it quite interesting. Look at the game in the description and you'll see what I'm trying to say here, right? Um, I also spoke about putting these sprites in a random order, right? So building placement in a random order, right? Now again, look at this, right? We always, so sometimes we get one here, maybe, right? Maybe at another time I might get something else, three, but notice after that it's always sequential, four, five, six, seven, right? You can just do it many times and you'll see that after the first leftmost, it's always sequential, right? And the reason that is sequential is because we are picking up one costume and thereafter we just going next costume, right? So the first costume is always random, but then after that it's sequential, right? But you could do better. You could in fact put them in a completely random order, right? Now what that will require you to do is to maintain a list where you pick up random numbers, right? So it's not merely about picking random number 1 to 7 or 1 to 8, depending on how many costumes you have. It's actually more than that because you have to make sure that the same building doesn't appear at two places, right? To do so, you have to use lists. Look at the example in the description and it may be more clear, right? Next, I talked about combining fortune teller with the memory game, right? I think this is a really cool idea. Again, there's a description, there's a project in the description. What I mean by that really is that, in here, in the quiz time. So, for example, here, I'm saying if answer is item one of Noor positions, say well done, right? Now, why should I always say only well done, right? I mean, won't it be cool if I had a list of answers, which are, let's say, like in a fortune teller game, they were a little bit funny, little bit sort of, sometimes sarcastic, sometimes a bit witty, and it says one of those answers, right? So similarly, if I answer wrongly, I can have a list of incorrect answers, and I think that will make the game that much more engaging, right? Now, I also spoke about different type of questions, right? So notice how here our questions are, which building did I visit first? Did I visit building number so and so? Or at what time did I visit, say, building number so and so, right? You can do a little bit more than this. For example, you could ask, what building did I visit after I visited, say, building number two, or before I visited building number three, and so on and so forth, right? Like I said, it's a basic requirement that you must have three kind of questions. So here my three kinds are: first one using item of list, item of, say, this list; second one using contains this item; and third one using item number, right, in the answer. So that's what I mean by three different types. So try to be creative here, try not to be too repetitive, yeah, but you can definitely do more than just what's given here, yeah. Then I spoke about different levels. Well, I think that's kind of straightforward. You can have, say, Noor and buildings. You can have maybe Noor and say something else in the second level. In fact, in the second level, probably you may want to place the sprites in a grid, um, or ask more difficult questions. Maybe Noor moves faster through those. So in this, for example, here we have a wait of, say, half a second. Maybe that becomes smaller, so it gets harder for a user to see, and so on, right? So you can have multiple sprites, multiple hero sprites, multiple building sprites, but again, you will have to coordinate different lists, and that's why there's work involved in that, right? Finally, I spoke about intertwining heroes, travels, and questions. Now, this is not very easy, but it's quite interesting actually. So what I mean by that is, notice that here Noor goes to four different buildings, and after that it starts asking questions, right? But won't it be cool if, let's say, Noor went to one building, then asked a question, right? Then Noor went to two buildings and asked two questions, maybe. Then Noor went to three buildings, asked three questions, and so on, right? So what has to happen really is that, once you place the buildings, that part is okay. But, after that, the broadcast between quiz time and the broadcast between, take positions has to keep happening back and forth, right? And also the list Noor positions has to be very carefully handled. So you have to, keep forming that list every time you go back and forth, right? So it's a little bit more involved for sure. It becomes like this game called Simon Says, for which I am giving you an example in the description. Look at that, and I think you can get some ideas from there. But like I said, this is not very easy, right? So with that, I think there are sufficient number of ideas in this for you to explore, for you to try. Most important, as always, is be systematic, enjoy the process, and then you will find that you are more and more creative. Okay, take care. Bye bye. Thank you.